All eyes will be on President Cyril Ramaphosa this afternoon when the ANC announces the outcomes of its three-day Special National Executive Committee, which took place over this weekend. Now, Ramaphosa will be joined by other members of the ANC's top six at the virtual press conference. Now, the top six only addresses the media jointly when a weighty matter is at hand. The governing party has been grappling with rampant corruption within its ranks, and a number of its leaders have been accused of looting COVID-19 relief funds. The Special NEC meeting was called to deal with issues of corruption. Ramaphosa has also had to fend off calls to step down from his political opponents. He has agreed to appear before the ANC's Integrity Commission to answer for the controversy surrounding the findings, or rather the funding, of his 2017 presidential campaign. Now, for more on what to expect this afternoon from that briefing, we're joined by our politics editor, Sbu Ngalwa. Good to have you with us, Sbu.
Okay.
It must have been a very tension-filled 3 days for the ANC's NEC. Top of the agenda, the issue of corruption. Now, as I said previously while we were playing, that clip, the fact that the top six only really jointly addresses the country when there are very weighty issues that are being discussed. What ought we to be expecting from today?
Obviously, Thami, it's not unheard of for the top six to address a press conference, but it's unusual. But obviously, as we said in that clip, it's when they have a weighty matter at hand. And I think that because this was a special NEC which was called to deal with issues of corruption, we would have expected, in fact, the precursor to that NEC, we saw the flurry of letters coming from all sides, which kind of gave us a flavor and an idea of what was to come from that meeting. And it was indeed a difficult meeting for the ANC, and we expect today, and the fact that President Ramaphosa is leading from the front, we expect that they'll be making a number of announcements which are actually more or less in line with his letter from over a week ago, where he kind of drew the line in the sand to say that no more will now be harsh on those who are charged with corruption. And we do know, Thami, that it was not an easy meeting. He has said that he will appear before the Integrity Commission, as we broke the story on Saturday. And we do expect now that there will be announcement around what happens among some of the leaders that are sitting even in the NEC that are charged with corruption and have cases before court.
Now, these letters were very timely that came about. To what extent do you think that these letters may have affected the agenda of what was being discussed in the NEC?
Of course, those letters were intended actually to in a way influence the agenda. Of course, but they were not on the agenda. The only letter that was on the agenda was the letter of the president. But obviously, in the psychological, political warfare, they may have been necessary for the detractors of President Ramaphosa to kind of weaken him going into this meeting. But I think more than anything, they also reveal what they call in military strategy deception, where one who is weak appears to be strong. Just to flex muscles, if I may use that analogy. I think there is desperation on the detractors, on the anti-Ramaphosa camp, because most of those members had actually coalesced around, these are people who have been accused of corruption or are fighting one case or another, and they kind of know, I think they can sense that something is coming.
There have been calls for President Cyril Ramaphosa to be more transparent, well, to be transparent when it comes to his CR17 campaign funding. But there have also been other camps that said if President Ramaphosa has to be transparent, so must every other leader, calling on maybe Thami Ngubeni also to be transparent as to the sources of her funding. Do you think that this is something that will be touched upon? That if the president opens up his books, then surely Thami Ngubeni ought to do the same too?
I'm sure that question came up, and it actually sounds logical. But the reality is that you act of your own, driven of your own volition, but also driven by your own ethics and moral duty. So the whataboutism to say that I have opened my book, so and so should also do. The reality is here is that President Ramaphosa has his issue, the issue of his funding is in the public domain. Some of those documents have already been shared publicly. And I think it's a good thing that is agreed to appear before the Integrity Committee, but also more importantly, remember, he came into power promising us a different ANC. And there is a bigger problem here of political party funding and the influence of money in politics. So it might actually be work in his favor. Because in any case, because these documents have been shared, it might obviously the personal information of third parties is another story altogether. But I do believe that actually it would put him in good stead to just say, okay, these are the people who funded my campaign. Can we carry on now?
Ultimately, is it not the mental well-being or psychological rest, if one may use that phrase, of South Africans here, of the voter, that is being scrutinized? And if the appearance of the president as well as Esmail is going to be behind closed doors in camera, what value is that for the South African citizen?
Of course, there's little value, but I think what is important is the symbolism of it all, because the ANC has been paid lip service to the fight against corruption and actually rescuing its name and maintaining the integrity of the party. They appointed an integrity committee as far back as 2012. They had to go to another conference in 2017 to give that integrity committee teeth, so to speak. But until today, that integrity committee still has countless resolutions and decisions that have been ignored by the party. So I think from the ANC internally, in having President Ramaphosa appear before that integrity commission, it actually gives us the necessary gravitas that it requires to be able to call any member of the ANC, because once the president has gone to appear before the integrity commission, then there is no reason why a rank and file member in a branch would not do that. So it may not benefit us as South Africans, but I think that from a transparency point of view, depending on what they do with those findings, but I'm sure as members of the media maybe we'll find out, because they do announce those. So we may not be inside there, but we will hear of those outcomes. I'm
going to have to let you go, but just one more question before I do. We heard last night Colony House throwing another, a cat among the pigeons, questioning inter-party funding and actually the buying of votes at conferences. And just comment a little bit about that, if that is even a direction that is going to be interrogated further, the buying of votes within ANC conferences.
That is a practice that is age-old, if I may say, and it affects all political parties. And at a level of the state, there's a law that has been passed in Parliament which looks into private party funding. But what is the issue here, and what the ANC also had to deal with, was what do they do with personal campaigns and how much money? Because here you can say that, yes, the money will always be an influence, but I think the quantum becomes the issue. 400 million, that's a lot of money. Where does that money go? How do you ensure that these people vote for you? And what do you owe the people who contribute? So the issue of transparency is an important one, and I hope that Colony House, although he's mired in factional battles of the ANC, I hope that actually was genuinely raising that point, because I think for our democracy to develop, it is important to have that level of transparency where we know where political parties get their money from.
As an issue of principle, and not just political parties, but also individual candidates within political parties when they're campaigning. But thank you so much. I'm sure you'll be back soon, just before that briefing at 4 p.m. That's our political editor there, Sbu Ngalwa, as we anticipate the address by the ANC's NEC, who've been meeting for the past 3 days. Do stay with us.